Good morning, everyone. Welcome to today's meeting of the Police and Crime Committee. This morning we will be holding our regular monthly question and answer sessions with the Mayor's Office for Policing and Crime. The session will focus on several key topics concerning the Metropolitan Police Service, including the use of Palantir's AI technology, diversity, equality and inclusion, shoplifting, working culture within the Met Command and Control, and the Metropolitan Police digital upgrade and cyber security plans. So before we begin, I would like to remind everyone to please make sure that your electronic devices are switched to silent mode to avoid any interruptions. Can I now ask our clerk, Sal Faisal, if any apologies have been received?
Thank you, Chairman. Apologies for absence have been received from Assembly Members Claude Duval and Small Edwards.
Thank you. Can I ask the committee to note the recommendations set out at item 2 and ask if any members have any other interest to declare? Thank you. Can we confirm the minutes of the meeting held on the 20th of May 2026 to be signed by me as a correct record? Thank you. Can we note the completed closing and ongoing actions arising from previous meetings of the committee? Thank you. Can we note the recent action taken by me as chairman of the committee under delegated authority, following consultation with party group lead members to agree the committee's letter to the Deputy Mayor for Policing and Crime on online fraud? Thank you. So now we move on to our main item of business, and I would like to welcome our guest, Kaya Comer-Schwartz, Deputy Mayor for Policing and Crime, and Kenny Bowie, Director of Strategy and MPS Oversight of the Mayor's Office for Policing and Crime. Good morning, both of you. Right, I shall start off as is normal, and these are to the Deputy Mayor, and we're starting off with questions about Palantir. So what part of the required procurement process did the Met fail to follow when procuring the deal with Palantir?
In line with our scheme of delegation, they failed to bring forward a procurement strategy, which is normal process, and they also failed to demonstrate a full competitive process. Yeah, those are the main areas which didn't demonstrate value for money to us.
And were they reminded that they had to do this at any point, or did they fail to do it having been asked to do it, or did you suddenly wake up one morning and think, oh, good Lord, they haven't done any of this? Talk me through that.
Yes, they were reminded.
In writing?
Yes.
All the way through?
I'm limited in what I can say because of the threat of legal challenge, but I've answered the question.
Okay. So in your letter to the Commissioner of the 21st of May, you wrote, and I quote, "The proposed contract has not ensured or demonstrated value for money." So can you put some meat on that comment? What exactly do you mean, and in what ways did they not do that?
I was not satisfied that the Met had adequately ensured or demonstrated value for money through the procurement process, given that they did not, they only fully engaged one company.
They only fully engaged?
One company.
Right, okay. And you'd spoken to the Commissioner about that, had you?
There was several conversations.
Okay. Yeah, to the Commissioner?
Yes.
Between you and him? Or was the Mayor involved in that?
As I've said previously, I'm limited in what I can say because of the threat of legal proceedings.
Yeah, but it was conversations between you and the Commissioner?
There has been several conversations along the process.
Okay. And excuse me. Well, I think the Deputy Mayor, I think you answered it, but for clarity, you can confirm that you had many conversations with the Commissioner about this, between you and him.
Well, no, there were several conversations along the process with both MOPAC officers, myself, the Deputy Commissioner, myself and the Commissioner.
Well, then the answer to my question is yes. You
Yes,
did.
I just want to clarify that there probably wasn't several conversations between me and the Commissioner on the point, but there was conversation.
Which MOPAC officer led this then?
Several MOPAC officers have been involved, obviously from different areas, as well as our Theo Blackwell, who's the Mayor's digital advisor.
In addition, you also question the affordability of the contract, whereas the MPS say it would save money following its implementation costs on top of delivering service improvements. So what concerns did you have there?
I'm limited. I'm really conscious that I'm limited in what I could say because of the threat of legal challenge. The contract was for over a 2-year period at the top end of the scale, and there were budgetary concerns in year, although there was amounts found, but for the second year there was not.
Okay. You also said in your letter the MPS was required to obtain MOPAC's approval for the procurement strategy that the MPS wished to adopt for the award of the proposed contract, and that this wasn't done despite MOPAC emphasising this requirement. So what dialogue occurred between MOPAC and the MPS on that?
As I've said previously, they were asked for that and numerous times.
I find it peculiar because the Commissioner seemed to be shocked that this was suddenly stopped.
Sorry, what's the question?
If these conversations had been going on and clearly you were not receiving the information you required and various things that we've just been talking about, if that was an ongoing conversation and you were not getting the information you needed, why was the Commissioner so shocked that the contract was then stopped?
I can't answer for the Commissioner, but what I would say is there is a clear scheme of delegation, there's a clear process. The process was raised, the questions around value for money were raised, and these processes have been in the guidance for a long time. And it is ultimately my decision to make.
So it was completely your decision?
Yes.
When did you tell the Mayor then that this is what you decided to do?
I can't remember the specific date, but obviously we discussed it. And the decision was taken on a Thursday of that week.
It was taken, it was announced after the MQT when one of my colleagues had actually asked questions about the Palantir contract. We went through the questions, the Mayor answered the questions, and then I think we came out of that meeting only to find that the contract had been stopped. So when did the Mayor know that you had written that letter?
I'm the man. Well, the decision was taken on the Thursday, so he was aware of that.
So there was no conversations with him as to whether that was a good idea or not?
Yeah, there was conversations leading
Well,
up.
then they must have come before, or did you tell him after the event?
No, I didn't tell him after the event, but there's a clear process of me taking the decision as delegated.
Yeah, I'm trying to establish, though, at what point did you discuss this with the Mayor? Because clearly this was going to cause problems. We're now going to have to go through another round of very difficult choices, which will affect Londoners quite drastically, I imagine. So obviously there's a political aspect to this, and you're a politician, which is why I'm asking you and not Kenny. It's important that you obviously needed to discuss this with the Mayor because of the implications. I'm asking you, how far in advance did the Mayor know that you were going to stop the contract with Palantir?
Well, let me be clear. I didn't stop a contract with a particular company. I stopped a process because it didn't work in line with the process and it didn't demonstrate value for money.
Okay, I used the wrong word, forgive me. At what point did the Mayor know that you were going to stop the process?
Obviously, the Mayor knew that I was minded to take the decision that I took, because that's, but I am in statute delegated that decision making.
Yeah, we know that. But clearly, if you're going to do something that's going to cause a lot of issues politically and for the running of the Metropolitan Police, clearly the mayor would want to know in advance and be given a whole list of, well, these are the repercussions that are going to come from this. At what point did you tell him you were not happy with the contract? The letter went out, I think it was the 21st of May. So at what point did the mayor know about this?
I believe there was a bilat where it was discussed, and then there were several discussions that week. Also,
Which week's that?
the week of the 21st that you mentioned.
So the mayor only knew about it the week of the 21st?
About the ultimate decision, because obviously we were waiting for all of the information to come in and the advice to come forward for me to take the decision.
So the mayor knew a week before. So he knew that was that contract or the agreement was finishing before the mayor's question time. Well, he must have done.
Sorry, the agreement was finishing. What agreement was finishing?
The process was finishing. He knew that you were sending that letter before the mayor's question time.
I don't know if he knew exactly when the letter was being sent.
No, but he knew you were doing it.
He knew that the advice was coming forward and we were considering all the advice.
Well, the letter was written and gone. Did he see the letter before it went?
I would have thought so.
Can you confirm? Did he or did he not see the letter before it was sent?
Well, I mean, the information was discussed, so I'm not sure whether he saw the specific letter.
So what has been the focus of discussions you've had with the Met since you blocked the contract with Palantir? And what actions are being taken as a result? I mean, have they stopped working now? Is their system not in use anymore? Talk us through that. What's happening now?
Sorry, to clarify, there's no system in line with the procurement that was coming forward in current use.
So how did they find out then that all these police officers are...
Okay, because that's a separate pilot.
Yeah, the pilot, yes.
Sorry.
Going back to that. So, okay, let's talk about the pilot. Is the pilot going to continue? Is some of the pilot work, was that due to go into the whole contract work, in which case it will stop now?
Yes, so it was due to be part of the wider UOA contract, and we're talking to them currently about how they can use the work of the pilot and how that might be taken forward. However, I'll reiterate, it's really important when using public money that there is a clear process to demonstrate value for money.
Okay, the Commissioner said the decision will result in savings needing to be made, which will, quote, directly hit the delivery of policing to London's communities. Are you and the Mayor comfortable with that?
Me and the Mayor are comfortable with making sure, when it comes to public money, there's proper oversight and that there is demonstrated value for money. We can't be in a position where we have contracts worth millions of pounds that don't adhere to that process.
So, no, but he is actually saying that it will directly hit the delivery of policing to London's communities. So I go back. Are you happy that that is going to happen?
We haven't been provided with information that breaks that down as of yet.
Well, you've only got to look, though. The new Met for London 2 had got lots of savings in there that directly came from that AI procurement, didn't it?
Yes, and we have said, and as we said in the budget, we fully stand in support of the Met using the newest technologies to drive efficiency through the Met. But what's important when doing that is that there is a proper process taken and there's demonstrated, given that it's public money, that there is a way that we can demonstrate value for money on that.
But clearly, there's going to have to be other savings that are not going to be palatable at all to Londoners. Are you happy about that?
We haven't been given that information as of yet, and we will obviously work through and assess that when and if that comes forward.
So the Commissioner's saying that it's going to hit the delivery of policing. The Commissioner has actually said that, and you haven't asked the questions. How exactly is that going to happen, Commissioner? What do you exactly mean by that?
That's a misconstruction of what I've said. We've asked, but we have not been, as of yet, given that information.
You've asked and you haven't been told.
As of yet,
Policing is so important in London. The Commissioner says this will directly hit the delivery of policing to London's communities. My question to the Commissioner would immediately have been exactly how?
Yes, and I have asked that.
And
what
you
we are
haven't
now
got an
working
answer.
through.
Oh dear.
Sorry. What we are now working through is how to take the tech procurement forward, and also any other efficiencies that may be needed.
I watched the London Policing Board. What an absolute farce that is, and nobody asked proper questions. But anyway, the Mayor seems to think he'll keep it, so the Commissioner goes to that and doesn't come to our meetings here, which we're not happy about cross-party. So he said it's now too late to start procuring this contract again, with service changes needing to begin from September. I watched him say that. Clearly, massive savings are going to have to be put in place now, because the savings from the AI contract, which you have just stopped, are not going to be able to be made. Did you understand the real implications of just stopping it there and then, given that there wasn't time to procure anything else?
We have set out, we knew from when we were setting the budget that we wanted to make sure that using tech efficiency was part of the process of driving efficiency throughout the Metropolitan Police Service. We have worked with the Met and continue to work with the Metropolitan Police in bringing forward several contracts on technology to drive efficiency. I met with the Deputy Commissioner and the digital team last week to continue to look at that and to continue to look at how they can bring the UOA contract forward. We will continue, as I've said in my letter and as was appreciated in the response letter, to continue to work with them to find a way forward through this.
So has MOPAC asked the Met to restart the procurement process already with other people? Or are you going to still look at Palantir to see if they can come in? Have you started that whole process?
We have asked that a procurement process comes forward at pace, and in line with procurement law, that's going to be open to anyone, depending on the pathway that is taken in terms of frameworks and otherwise.
So how long have you been told that this could now take?
We have discussed different ways forward, and the different pathways would have different implications in terms of timing.
In the meantime, the Commissioner is going to have to make some very difficult decisions, and you're going to have to be part of those. When do you expect to be given the difficult decisions that you are going to have to make, because you've cancelled this at the last moment?
I make no apologies for making sure that we have the right oversight over significant amounts of money that are meant to. Our job is to make sure that on behalf of Londoners that there is value for money in these contracts.
You may make no apology for that. Are you going to apologise when we get a load more cuts that we can't afford to have as Londoners? Are you going to apologise to the police officers that are not going to be in their jobs because we're going to have to lose a load of police officers that Londoners can't afford to do? Are you going to apologise then, or are you going to continually say, I make no apologies?
The Mayor and myself have made sure repeatedly that we have been in full support of the Met and making sure that they have significant budgets. We've worked very closely with the Home Office to make sure of that. The Mayor has repeatedly brought forward increasing the tax precept to make sure that the Met's budget is now a quarter funded by the Mayor. We've always been in support of that. But what we cannot be, and as by questioned by a member of Neil Garrett, Assembly Member Garrett, what we cannot do is have significant tech contracts not having the right oversight, because that is not value for money for Londoners.
Okay. And so you do have access to all the times that you've written to the Commissioner and said you want answers to the contract that you've actually stopped this because of that the answers that you were not getting for a whole year, you've got that in writing.
As I've repeatedly said in this committee, this is now under the threat of legal action, so I can't answer that question.
Did you get legal advice before you vetoed the contract?
All contracts have legal considerations in them.
So you did. You see, I don't know what to say because all of us watching the Commissioner actually insisted that the procurement was legally and commercially compliant.
But there is a difference between legally compliant and our processes and demonstrating value for money.
So it is down to value for money and your processes.
Yes.
And Palantir are completely aware of that, are they?
Yes.
Okay, I'll stop now. I've got Benali, you wanted to come in first, and then Marina after that.
Good morning, panellists, and thanks for joining us. And I totally recognise that if we are straying into legal matters, I totally understand you might not be able to answer. So we're in the position of kind of looking at competing letters and discussions and trying to pull together where things are coming from. So in the letter that the Deputy Commissioner sent to you on the 12th of June, he said that the MPS utilised a Crown Commercial Service framework for this procurement, and they said that they use that for all sorts of items from some software licences and energy provision. Is he right that the Crown Commercial Service are used in those cases? And if so, what was the issue with using it this time?
Sorry, can you clarify what your question is?
Let me do that again. So is he right that the Crown Commercial Service process and framework is used for these types of procurement? And if so, was there an issue with using CCS in this instance? Because particularly when you've talked about only having one provider, they specifically said that the CCS was the reason why they only looked at one provider.
Obviously, there is no problem with the Metropolitan Police using the Crown Commercial Framework. Those are legal frameworks. There are several of them. I'm very conscious of what I'm legally constrained to say, but the frameworks don't consist of one provider.
That's helpful. So you're saying that the issue wasn't about the framework; it was how the framework was instituted.
Yes.
That's really helpful. Slight change of topic. So it seems quite astounding to me that the Commissioner has taken to the airwaves to talk about the dire consequences of not using this software package, but yet he hasn't spelled out to you concretely the impact of what this software is not going to be, what the impact of not using this software is going to be. I'm trying to think of my day jobs where if I made a decision and my boss called it in, I don't think I'd be taking to the airwaves to condemn it. I mean, is the Commissioner straying into politics?
Once again, I think that's a question for the Commissioner. I understand that obviously the Commissioner goes regularly and has media engagements, and this was clearly something that came up in those. It doesn't really change for me what happened. I took the decision on the basis of process and value for money. We need to work now to make sure, and we are, that we work through processes coming forward and the impacts of those.
But from your perspective, right, as the decision maker here, would you rather the Commissioner sat down and fully explained the impact of not using this software and the proposed cuts before taking to the news?
I mean, it would be preferable, obviously, but it's important that really, in my position, we work on making sure that the right processes are followed and that we have the oversight on the impact.
Is this going to be an issue if this keeps reoccurring? It seems like quite a challenging relationship where, you know, things are being said on broadcast media before you're having clear conversations about operational decisions.
What I would say is overall, I believe since I've begun in this role that we really work hard. We're very conscious of the relationship between MOPAC and the Metropolitan Police Service. And what I would say is this is an anomaly. This is not, as previously mentioned, we sign off decisions all the time. We have regular meetings around the use of tech and infrastructure and investment in those. So I wouldn't say, and as I've also said, we are now working together to look at ways forward on this. So there's always going to be tension in a relationship between an oversight body and the operation. I think we need to recognise that, but what's more important always is delivering for London.
Okay, I think to be fair, if the Commissioner was here, you would say he's not getting into politics. He's just damn well concerned about providing a Met fit for purpose for London. I think that's what he would say. Assembly Member Ahmed.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, Deputy Mayor. Good morning, Ms Bowie. Deputy Mayor, and I'm going to ask this question. You may or may not be able to answer it because of the pre-legal issues, which absolutely and quite correctly you should not be answering. The Met very clearly assume that this tech is vital. If that's the case, are you aware of why they only pursued a single vendor?
I don't feel like I can answer that
No,
question.
appreciate that. Thank you. Thanks.
Thank you.
Sorry, thank you, Chair.
Thank you. I think it is MOPAC's duty, though, to ask questions. If there's going to be an issue about it afterwards, perhaps they should have asked those questions at the beginning.
Chair, sorry, I should clarify. I'm not answering that question due to the threat of legal action, not because of whether that happened or not.
Okay. Before I go on to the next question, I would like to welcome Year 12 politics students. Oh, they're not here.
They're at 11.
Well, I thought they'd come in very quietly. You gave me that, and I assumed they were here. And I'm so engrossed, you see, in what is being said, and horrified at the same time. Anyway, we'll go over now to Assembly Member Roberts.
Good morning. Deputy Mayor, the Met has described MOPAC's decision regarding Palantir as, quotes, disappointing, and stated that it needs access to the best available technology to modernise policing. So what assessment has MOPAC made of the operational impact of this decision?
Obviously, we work very closely with MOPAC officers to make sure that we are assessing that both in financial terms and trying to understand when those operational decisions come forward, that we understand the impact of those. We're trying to make sure that we're having live discussions about how the learning from previous operational decisions were made and taking that forward in the considerations.
Okay. I wasn't quite sure if you said when or if these operational impacts come forward.
It's because I want to be clear that we are also actively working with them on taking forward other procurement decisions. So it's a scalable thing.
Fair enough, thank you. You said that you'd asked the Commissioner for a breakdown of the tough choices, which are going to be. When did you ask him for that list?
We've asked in line before taking the decision. We've asked after that, and we continue to work through those. We've had one meeting, as I said, between myself and the relevant Metropolitan officers and MOPAC officers to look at what we can do in terms of process on the other technological contracts that will affect this, but also to start talking through what the operational impacts may be, but they haven't brought forward anything concrete yet.
So what was it? I mean, when was the last time? I mean, what I'm trying to get at is, when was the last time you asked, and the reason for the delay in them responding? I mean, if it was yesterday, well, then that's fine. If it was last week, then I'd have questions.
We have asked, obviously, when you take a decision, you're conscious of that decision having impact, and you're aware of that. I've asked on the basis of that for those decisions. I think the reason that it's taking a while to come through is they're working up those. Obviously, similarly to previously, those things have to be assessed on various scales, and also, as I've said already, obviously this is about stopping the current process. A new process we're working through, whether a new process can be brought forward, and what the other technological, I think there's a list of 30 contracts that we're working through currently.
Okay, thank you. The reason I ask is that the Metropolitan Police Commissioner has been quite clear. He's been on. We've heard the media around saying that there are going to be significant cuts to frontline services. He's been quite clear about that. He's not saying that we may be able to avoid these if we have a different procurement and if we have a different service provider, or if indeed the Palantir contract actually goes ahead, given the legal challenge. And I appreciate we can't talk about that. But when he appeared at the policing board, and this is a direct quote, "As a direct result of this decision, we are now scoping at pace tough choice options. While we had a contingency list, we had not developed this work as had hoped not to make these reductions." So there's a contingency list. Yep. Have you seen the contingency list?
My understanding of the contingency list is it was looking at some of the tough choices that in the end last time didn't come to fruition because of the additional
we all understand that.
money.
That's the nature of contingency. It's there in the back pocket. Have you seen?
Yeah, sorry, I don't think you're understanding my answer. I'm saying that I know that some of the tough choices that were previously listed, they're looking at some of those now,
Yes.
and also whether there are different and other options that might be taken forward. I believe at the London Policing Board, it was said that they'd be looking at those in the next 2 weeks and bringing those forward.
At pace, absolutely.
Yeah.
But still, I've not had the answer to the question which I asked, which is, have you seen the contingency list?
Not currently, because, as I said, it's not a finalised list. But we have talked to the Metropolitan Police Service about
forgive me.
Understanding where the red lines are, understanding what the considerations of those are, and how they're interconnected with other decisions.
I appreciate that that's what the list will eventually be, but my question is, have you seen the original contingency list, which lists all of the available options available to the Commissioner for Cuts?
Not at this stage.
You haven't seen that?
No.
And you're the Deputy Mayor for Policing?
I'm very aware of that.
So he's not shared with you what's on the, what's in the back pocket, what might be next for the chop? Are you not likely curious about why you've not seen that list?
Well, I would assume it's because we've been asking questions about how that works, or how it works with the other financial decisions that have come forward. There have been some discussions, and I believe some were mentioned in the London Policing Board. And I'm obviously conscious, as I previously said, that there's a tough choices list that was previously drafted but not enacted because of that. But I'm also conscious, similarly to as we had last time, we were looking at these financial decisions on the back of long-term underfunding, that these things need to be worked through, and they have different. You might start with an idea of a tough choice, and then when worked through, that's not actually operationally viable, or it doesn't likely to have the savings that you might think originally.
So
Can I just clarify? So,
yes, of course, Kelly.
thanks. So, prior to the decision, there were a number of areas which were identified by the Metropolitan Police, which Deputy Mayor was aware of. Now, we
She
don't
just
want.
said that she's not aware of them.
No, I'm just coming on to clarify that, if that's okay. Now, those were broad headlines. Now, what they didn't include was individual breakdowns of every individual possibility that there might be. That is now what the Met will be working through. I don't want to get into what those specific areas are, because I don't think it's appropriate that people within the Met, those individual Met teams, would find out from me sitting here saying that out loud in this meeting. But that is exactly what the Met will do, and as ever, it's appropriate that the Met bring forward those tough choices and the work for them for the Deputy Mayor to consider properly. I don't think it's a good use of the Deputy Mayor's time if the Met bring forward every single item on the list when actually some of them aren't going to be practicable or aren't on their list of things which could be taken forward. But at the appropriate time, as is always the case, those will be brought forward in detail to be discussed with the Deputy Mayor.
Thank you. Well, it's a nice try, but what we've heard at this meeting, it's always nice to hear from the Prime Minister in the meeting. It was a nice try, but unfortunately what we have heard this morning is that the Deputy Mayor has no idea about what's on that list. She said so herself. She has not seen the contingency list. And now the Metropolitan Police Commissioner obviously has a list that he is considering at pace. And so far, to this point, that information has not been shared with the Deputy Mayor. Now, if I was Deputy Mayor, I'm the leader of a council, and I know that if there's going to be budgetary cuts coming along in the next year,
Sorry,
that I know if I
question?
can finish. Well, I beg your pardon.
No, I'm asking who's the question directed
No, I'm just
to?
talking to Kenny at the moment,
Oh,
and
you're talking
but
to
I will
Kenny.
then
Okay,
be
thanks.
addressing you if that's okay. I know that as leader of a council that I will have a range of tough choices which need to be made in terms of budgetary cuts, and I know which are going to be the first ones on the list and which ones we may manage to avoid. But I know what those ones which I manage to avoid are, and I get told that by my various departments. I find it extraordinary, Deputy Mayor, that you have not had even the basic level of outline given to you, which you just said that you have not seen the contingency list. And that is the question. Do you not find that extraordinary?
No, as we've both said, we've been given outline areas, but we haven't had the full list. And given that these things need to be worked up and worked through, I think that, and that is happening, as we've both said, at pace, that I know, and not because I've talked to Deputy Commissioner about it, that we will have those discussions and we will make sure that MOPAC is fully involved in the oversight of those decisions.
When?
Well, as previously said again, that those decisions are being brought forward over the next 2 weeks, and throughout those things, we're in regular contact with them.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
I find this extraordinary, Deputy Mayor. I'd want to be over this like a rash. It's so important. And well, I think the Commissioner's lucky to have you, because I don't think he'd want me, but I would want to be working with him on this, because this is going to affect Londoners so drastically. And
Absolutely,
for you to...
and as I reiterate, again, we are working very closely with the Metropolitan Police Service, both on bringing forward alternative tech procurement pathways and understanding the impacts of the decisions financially.
Yeah, so closely you don't even know what's on that list. Assemblyman... Yeah, Assemblymember Best.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor, can you confirm when the procurement process started?
I don't have an exact date, but I can come back to you.
Can
with
you
that.
give me a ballpark?
The framework... No, I wouldn't like to give false information to
A
the
year?
committee.
Can you
Oh,
give me-
it was this year.
So the procurement started this year. It was open this year. So there's not too many months it could have been. I'm guessing it must have been January, February.
I don't want to give false information to the
But it was
committee.
a-
I'm also really conscious that this whole thing
Okay.
is under legal consideration. I would rather make sure that in that context that the correct information is given.
Okay. So the procurement started this year. At that point, you would have seen through the framework, the Crown commercial framework, you would have seen that one provider was being looked at. At that point, you knew that wasn't acceptable to you, because that's the main argument as to why you've said that you won't sign the contract, is because only one provider was looked at. You knew that then. Why did you not stop this months ago?
Once again, I'm very conscious that this is under legal consideration and that there may well be a legal process on this. However, I think that it is a misconstruction that those questions weren't asked.
I think if you just said to the Commissioner on day one, I am not signing this contract, you have only engaged one provider, they would have stopped that work immediately.
I'm really conscious. I'm not going to answer questions when there's actual threat of legal proceedings.
But the problem is, legal proceedings or not, you've cost Londoners millions of pounds. And I don't want to get into whether the value for money of whether you should have awarded the contract or not. But primarily from what you've told us today, and now you're saying you're not going to answer questions, but you've made clear from your letter you were never, ever going to agree to this from the point that you knew one provider was being looked at. You knew that. As soon as this happened, you knew that. But you've let it drag on months and cost Londoners millions because of that.
I know that questions were asked, including by myself, about the way in which whether other providers were.
But you can't even tell me which month it was in. There's only been 6 months. You don't even remember which month it started in.
As I've repeatedly said, I'm not going to give unclear information to this committee, especially when there is legal proceedings underway. But what I will do is endeavour to answer the question, which is that yes, the concerns about how this was being engaged under the current framework were raised, and when
Not a concern. A concern is something we can get over, right? And I would argue that you're giving clear information to this committee about this. A concern is something that you discuss, you talk through. This is a red line. You have said in your letter it was a red line for you. There was only one provider being looked at, and that was a red line. You were going to cut that contract off. So you knew that on day one.
Day one of the process? Is that your question?
Yeah.
Well, the framework had more than one provider on it. So, and we, as I've said previously,
But you just told Assemblymember Roberts only. No, sorry, the Assemblymember hadn't actually. You just said there was only one provider.
There was one provider fully engaged through the process.
Which you said was a red line for you. Which you said was the red line.
Yes, because it didn't demonstrate value for money. Also, we asked for a scheme of delegation to understand, a procurement strategy to understand how this was going to be taken forward, enacted, to understand exactly the things that we're asking. That never came forward to me, which is the usual process.
Okay, so it could have been acceptable that only one provider was fully engaged.
Yeah, in other contracts, because there are direct awards, but there are definitely different proceedings alongside that. And there's clear reasons for that, clear rationale. And we would have understood that if the procurement strategy had come forward.
Okay. Have you intervened previously in any case like this?
Not in the same way where it's got to this point, but yes, we regularly ask questions about why.
Not asking questions. I imagine you ask questions. I'd hope most days.
And we have taken decisions to push back certain actions on procurement things to get further information or to ask that they look at it in a different way.
So you've previously refused to sign off Met
No,
contracts?
I've never had to take this
So
level
you've
of
never
action
done it before, then the correct answer is no.
No, I've never had to take
You've
this
never
level
done
of
it
action
before.
before.
Has your predecessor ever done it to your knowledge?
To my knowledge, no.
So this is the first time ever that this has been done?
To my knowledge, yeah.
Okay. You said earlier you weren't sure about the effects that your decision is going to have on the Met.
I haven't been given those details as of yet.
But you are aware of some of the effects, aren't you?
Can you
What be-
clarify? I've been given areas that
So
they're looking at.
how many roles do you think the Met's going to lose as a consequence?
I've been given 2 different figures on that.
Okay. I've got one. So what 2 different figures have you got?
I've been given, I think in the public domain, the numbers have been used as 750, but also 500.
Okay. So around 750. So you do the answer to the question, what effect does this decision have? You know that you've lost from your decision 500 to 700 roles within the Met.
Well, A, there's a difference of 250 in those numbers. B, I haven't been given Those are headline figures that we're now working through.
The Commissioner's
So-
telling you you're losing between 500 to 700 officers, so you know that.
Those are the figures that have been put out in the public domain, yes.
Okay,
but
but
what's
so when someone
really-
asks you the question, what's the effect on the Met, you can say off the bat, well, I know that I've lost us between 500 and 700 roles. You can say that straight off the bat before we even get into the rest of it.
No, because I don't know how the other procurement things we're taking forward those savings will be. I don't know the effect of potential other money that's coming in
So the
on
Commissioner's wrong.
projects. I'm just, no,
So the
I'm not
Commissioner's
saying...
wrong.
I'm saying I have not got the full information that we would need to have to assess that.
Well, the Commissioner's told you something is fact and you're disputing it. So, ergo, you think he's wrong.
I want to make sure that we have really detailed information on where those numbers might fall and the impact and what we can do together to mitigate that number.
Does the Commissioner have full confidence in you and what you're doing as Deputy Mayor?
That's not a question that I'm willing to answer.
Do you have full
I have
confidence in the
full
Commissioner?
confidence in my decision
Do you have
that I
full
have taken and for the reasons why I've taken it.
Do you have full confidence in the Commissioner?
I have full confidence in the
So-
Commissioner's ability to enact his role, but I'm conscious that my role and his role need to be able to work together, and that, especially when it comes to the spending of public money, that those processes are adhered to.
So do you have full confidence in the Commissioner?
Of course.
Of course.
But that doesn't mean that we're going to have to agree on everything. We need to work through these things, as I've said previously.
But he's sorry, and this is my last question, Chair, but he's conflicted every single thing you've said in this instance. He disagrees with every single step you've taken. How can you have full confidence? How can you have full confidence in him when he believes that every single decision you've made to this point was wrong?
Because this is one area of
quite a big
conflict
one though,
and
isn't it?
disagreement, sure, but we have different roles in this area. We're enacting different roles. And whilst we need to make sure that our overarching mission of delivering safety for Londoners is adhered to in both of those things, they're different. But I wouldn't say, and as I've said repeatedly before, that that's a thing that we hold across the whole relationship. And we've worked really closely to deliver a lot of progress for the Met over the last 2 years, and
Do
that's
you mean
reflected
closing
in.
police stations and sacking officers, losing officers?
I mean,
we might
in
define progress
reducing
slightly.
Gun crime falling by 11%. I mean,
Do you want to do
in personal
shoplifting,
robbery,
burglary?
but yeah, burglary is down 5%.
No, right,
Theft
thank
from
you.
person is down 23%.
We can quote figures at each other all day, but I'll
well,
tell you one
those
thing.
are
I will
less
tell you.
crimes on our streets.
But I will
Those are
tell you,
impacts
Deputy
on
Mayor, I will
Londoners.
tell you, Deputy Mayor, for a fact, go and knock any door in London, go and speak to any resident, and they'll tell you crime in London is out of control. What you say in here does not match up with what people say out there. So you can quote from that list all you like.
Well,
Get out there and
these are-
speak to people. You'll hear something
I
entirely
speak to
different.
Londoners all the time. I've lived here all my life, and I think that you pushing a narrative that London is unsafe is actually quite problematic, and it doesn't help policing, and it certainly doesn't help
Okay.
anyone in London feel safe. Our police and crime plan has the express aims of making London safer. That's reflected in these steps, and making London feel safer, and that's my mission.
Okay. 500 officers. He said on Thursday you're losing because you don't have the AI contract. Work that would have been done by AI has now got to be done by officers. So we're going to lose 500 officers on the front line. I watched the London Policing Board, although I absolutely disagree with it. We should have the Commissioner or Deputy Commissioner here now, but we don't get any officers to this because of the wretched Policing Board that asks
The Deputy Commissioner was
pansy
at the
questions.
last committee of this committee.
I'm talking about the Policing Board. I watched it.
But at the last meeting of this committee, the Deputy Commissioner was here.
Yes, they should be here all the time. I wish there was a police officer here to answer our questions on Palantir, but there isn't. I'll go on to the next question. And all of us are cross about this. Cross-party, we should have the police at these meetings, not at the London Policing Board, where they are not challenged on decisions they are making at all. But
London
at least
Policing
you're
Board-
here for us to challenge you.
The London Policing Board made it very clear that they have a key oversight role on this, and when it's appropriate, given the legal proceedings, that this will be looked at.
Do me a favour, they went into part 2, which meant none of it was televised, none of us saw what was discussed. Don't give me that, because we're seasoned
That
enough
was
to
on
know.
item 3, which
Let's
was
go
on
on
the
to the next
transformation.
question. Let's go on to the next question. The Mayor has raised concerns about companies acting contrary, and I quote to you again, London's values. To what extent, if at all, can MOPAC assess whether a supplier's activities or conduct are relevant to procurement decisions?
The decision I took was based on processes not being adhered to and the Metropolitan Police Service not demonstrating value for money in that.
Yeah, I'll go back to the question. The Mayor has raised concern about companies acting contrary to London's values. This was brought up just before the procurement was stopped and then again afterwards. What does the Mayor mean by London's values when it comes to companies? What does he mean by that?
I don't think that, I mean, it's outside of the current procurement law, those considerations, and as I've repeatedly said, it's really important that we're aware that I took that decision based on a lack of information around value for money and the process not being adhered to.
Do you know what he meant by it, was the question.
Do I know what the Mayor's definition of value
You're
for
a
money
deputy
is?
mayor. You must talk to the Mayor. What do you think he meant by London's values?
I think it's quite normal for ethical considerations to be taken into consideration. It's part of the Mayor's wider GLA procurement strategy, and I'm sure that that is what he was alluding to.
So do you think it was a sensible statement for the Mayor to make in the aftermath of what was supposed to be a commercial procurement decision?
I don't think that that's what happened, and I think that it's completely within the Mayor's gift to make points about concerns.
Okay, for time reasons only, we'll move on, but I'm sure we'll be coming back to this in any event. Assembly Member Hamdash.
Thank you. So a recent parliamentary committee described Palantir expanding role in the public sector as an unacceptable point of weakness. Does MOPAC share the concerns raised about supply dependency, vendor lock-in, or the concentration of public sector data?
I'm obviously aware of the committee's report, and those are strong considerations. It's an all-party committee. However, I can't really go into, because of legal considerations, whether that took a factor in our consideration.
I mean, just more broadly, it'd be good to understand in the Met Police's kind of framework, how much does social value and then things like data sovereignty kind of factor into the kind of framework that they're using?
It would be normal, if presented with a procurement strategy, to consider those issues and the weighting of them.
Because obviously one of my concerns has been Palantir's track record and its use of Palantir, whether that's war crimes in Gaza or other dire concerns about the use of the software. It's just, I think it would be good to understand to what degree those considerations kind of factor into frameworks, because, I know we were both at Islington Council at a time that I think a council that really led the way on ethical procurement and has continued to. Do you think there's any kind of lessons from how councils approach procurement for MOPAC and the Metropolitan Police?
The wider procurement strategy outlined by the Mayor has those considerations thought through. What I would say, though, is that we also have to consider that we have to enact the 2023 procurement legislation, and those are not as concerned with those issues in terms of ethics, but are important in terms of making sure that value for money and other considerations are thought through.
Okay. Yep. Assembly Member Ahmed.
Thank you, Chair. Deputy Mayor, with some of the discussions that have been ongoing, it could be construed that London, it would be fair to assume that Londoners might actually think that there seems to be, there might be an assumption that there'll be no procurement of the kind of technology that we've been talking about. Putting aside the issue of Palantir, tech clearly has an important role in the as it does in any public service these days. Can you confirm both yours and the Mayor's commitment to using technology to keep Londoners safe?
Yes, I can confirm. Thank you.
Thank you. Do you want to expand on that at all?
I mean, yes, and I think later on in the committee, we're going to talk further about some of the illustrations of that. As I've said previously, we regularly sign off investments in the use of technology. We're going on to talk about shoplifting later in the agenda. One of the significant improvements in that has been being able to use tech platforms to support businesses and the police in driving up outcomes in that area.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Thank you, Chair.
Assembly Member Lord Duval.
Can I apologise to the committee and the panel for arriving late at the meeting? Can I just be clear on something you said, Deputy Mayor, about the numbers that are involved? We've established it's between 500 and 700. Is it roles or is it police officers? Or is it a mixture of support staff and police officers? What do we think it is?
We haven't been given that information.
And this is this would be entirely around the technology and AI, and I could presume some of them would be redeployed back into other services. They wouldn't be lost. I think it's important that we understand the nature of the toing and froing going on here. I'm also concerned around double counting, that some of these are wider issues in terms of the MPS's funding issues. I want to be clear, is this just concerning the nature of this contract that you are about to enter into? Is that what we're talking about, these roles or police officers, once we've established that?
Assemblymember Duval, you're completely correct in understanding that because of the way the legislation works around police officers, we reduce the recruitment pipeline rather, or there are other ways in which natural attrition from the Met is, but they're not going to, or redeployment in different areas through different contracts. We know we've discussed this at committee previously. So those are the kind of information that we're hoping to get. And also, as I've said previously, considering that with other funding resources that might come in and how that affects the overall pot.
Okay, now, as a side, I don't want to ask anything about the legal action, but I do want the unprecedented exchange of letters of dispute between yourselves, MOPAC, and the MPS. Now, in there's timelines that suggest that MOPAC was involved in some process around that, and it's the knowledge that MOPAC had, and I expect procurement law, the courts will deal with the outcome of that if it ever gets to the courts. But more importantly then, if we weren't going into the courts, we'd have a bit of an inquiry, wouldn't we? Wouldn't we have an investigation of how far and why, as my colleague said earlier, why did we proceed, why did we go along this process before calling a halt to it? Because that seems to me, fundamentally what you said earlier to us, it didn't meet MOPAC's criteria. You didn't mention criteria, that's my words, around that. How comes that we have a process where MOPAC is, presumably the MPS say, is involved all the way through. That's what the MPS Deputy Commissioner's letter says, and yet we get to this stage to call a halt. Why shouldn't I be demanding an investigation into MOPAC in terms of their role of not, either they weren't advising you as Deputy Mayor or advising the Mayor's office in terms of his role as Police and Crime Commissioner about this process going on. What is it? Tell me. What, are you in dispute with the MPS about what they claim, that MOPAC was fully aware of their intentions and processes all the way through this process?
So I think the first thing to say is we did provide advice to the Deputy Mayor. And
You have to speak up a bit. Sorry. Thank you.
Okay, apologies. Sorry, Lord Duval. So yes, we did provide advice to the Deputy Mayor and up to the Mayor's office on this. It does, providing advice on an issue which is complex and is worth potentially up to £50 million of taxpayers' money, is not something that you would expect us to do immediately. I would say that from the first discussion of this at the Exco, where MOPAC attended, we attend there as observers as opposed to as being active decision makers. Only decision maker is the Deputy Mayor in this by statute. I think it was roughly about 6.5 weeks for us on a contract of 50 million to put advice to the Deputy Mayor. I do not consider that that is an unreasonable period of time for something like this. The Met has set out their timeline. That doesn't include communications and other conversations which took place. I'm not going to get into exactly what those are for legal positions. I think it's why shouldn't there be an inquiry? I mean, you can do whatever you wish to call for, but I would say I'm content as the MOPAC representative here that we have discharged our duty in terms of asking the questions and advising both the Deputy Mayor and the Mayor's office in the correct fashion.
And at the appropriate time, you'll share with us your involvement with the MOPAC's involvement with the MPS in this process.
Well, it's not a decision for me.
Well, I mean, I'm very clear that the PCC is the oversight of MOPAC and its dealings in this. I'm also, I know I keep on saying it, but this is currently under the threat of legal proceedings.
Which may not happen.
Yeah, it's a threat.
So we could go on for a number of years on that, and then we wouldn't be having the scrutiny, would we?
Understood. However, you'll understand why we will hopefully understand whether that's proceeding or not. And I want to make sure that we are able to demonstrate the steps that we took along the way.
Well, an important part of that, Chair, in terms of doing that, is providing that information. And at the appropriate time, that's what I said, I hope you can share with us, because I think we do want to get to the bottom of some of those exchanges that took place in the letter, which are relationship-type issues that surprises every one of this member of this committee. What took place.
I would like to give, as previously said, I would like to give Lord Duval the assurance that we continue to actively have conversations with the Metropolitan Police Service around bringing a procurement process forward, around obviously day-to-day operational updates, that we continue to work closely with the Metropolitan Police Service in a number of areas, including on this. So, you know, I wouldn't want you to have the sense that there's a catastrophic breakdown in relationship. I spoke to the Commissioner, the Deputy Commissioner yesterday. I have my bylat as normal tomorrow.
Okay.
But do you not accept it was an unprecedented exchange of letters?
I do accept that it was unprecedented in a number of ways. I've outlined the reasons I took that decision. I accept that there, you know, whether it be legal proceedings or oversight, they'll want to be more understanding of that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we'll end here. I will just say that I'm very concerned that you say that values are taken into account when we're looking into procurement, when I don't know what those values are.
I want
But
to be
anyway,
clear that I didn't say that.
well, we'll look back on the transcript, but that's what I took from it. But I just would like to know what the values are. If that's not what you said, fine. I can see Kenny shaking his head there. But anyway, that's what I heard, but I'll accept if it's not right. Okay, we're now moving on to diversity, equality and inclusion in the Met following Henry Nowak, and I'm sure the whole committee agree with me that we send our very best wishes to his family. It was a shocking event. So we'll start with Assembly Member Wilson.
Thank you, Chair, and good morning, panel. And yeah, to echo those words from the Chair that ultimately the most important thing here is that we do respect what's happened. Yeah, it was a tragic case, and we all saw the footage, which we'll come on to in a minute, I guess. But yeah, our condolences absolutely with those affected. So, but obviously, when a case like this happens, it's entirely right and proper that implications are discussed and raised, and that's what I'd like to do now. So, the first question, and this is to you, Deputy Mayor, what discussions has MOPAC had with the Met or with national policing bodies regarding the circumstances of Henry's death and the issues that have been raised? Please.
Thank you, Assembly Member Wilson. I'd like to echo my deepest condolences to the family of Henry Nowak, and I'd also like to say that given the loss of a child is probably the worst thing that many of us can imagine, their amazing courage to come forward on the back of that and ask for calm and peace, and for this incident not to be weaponised to create disorder is really important. I understand that the IOPC, there is a live investigation of what happened in that case, and I think obviously on the back of that, those recommendations, consideration should be taken. It is obviously a conversation that has national impact. I've been in discussions with my equivalents up and down the country about that. So we wait to see the recommendations from the IOPC, but I just think it's a horrific tragedy, and that we must respect that, for the loved ones, what they're going through is unimaginable.
We must, but that doesn't mean that we shouldn't talk about the implications, and I think that's been quite chilling. Some of the commentary from some of the political figures effectively trying to shut down discussion rather than acknowledge that something horrific has happened and try and understand why and learn from that. But we will await the IOPC investigation with great interest. I understand it's going to be hopefully a quick one. In light of the public reaction to the footage and the circulation of that and the case more widely, what assessment has MOPAC made of the impact incidents of this nature can have on public confidence in policing, particularly any kind of London impacts or implications?
You'll know that MOPAC regularly surveys Londoners on trust and confidence issues. We know that currently some of the most significant lack of trust and confidence in the Metropolitan Police Service is around black and mixed race Londoners, and also members of the LGBTQ plus community. Obviously, on the back of the horrific loss of Henry Nowak, we are making sure that the police is assessing whether any disorder has come back, has occurred on the back of that, or will occur on the back of that. There's been one small protest in Westminster that occurred peacefully. So we continue to work closely with the police to make sure that those impacts are understood.
Thank you. Now, what do you understand by the concept or the term of two-tier policing?
what my definition of the two-tier policing. What I will say is I think the term is very unhelpful, because I strongly believe that everyone should be able to have full trust and confidence in the police service that, you know, based on Pelian principles, are there to help and serve and protect us. So those principles are really important. I think it's a very unhelpful term, because I don't accept that it should be taken that the police act or can act or not be held to account without acting without fear or favour for anyone.
So if everybody should be able to have trust and confidence in the police, does that mean that everybody should be treated equally, should be treated the same, should be treated without fear or favour?
Yes, I strongly believe that everyone should be able to be treated by the police service that protects them and that serves them without fear or favour. And the police should be able to act without fear or favour too.
Because my understanding of the concept of two-tier policing is that if people are treated or being treated differently, not on the basis of something that they have done, but on the basis of something that they are. And I think what I'd like to now move on to is trying to understand the kind of training, guidance and policies that created or could create an environment in which that is happening. And I start with the National Police Anti-Racism commitment, which says it's not enough for us not to be racist. Our commitment to racial equity means producing equality of policing outcomes for people from different ethnic groups by responding to individuals and communities according to their specific needs, circumstances and experiences, with the understanding that these will be racialised and with the aim of reducing harm. It does not mean treating everyone the same or being colourblind. I mean, you've probably heard those words quoted quite a lot in recent days. Interested to hear your thoughts on that, particularly this idea that it does not mean treating everyone the same or being colourblind.
I mean, obviously that is a national commitment that was undertaken. I think it's really important, and as the Commissioner outlined previously, but at the last LPB, that Metropolitan Police Force is working towards becoming an inclusive organisation and an anti-racist organisation. And equity, understanding that because you're disabled, you may have different needs to someone who's not disabled, whether, you know, your life experience as someone who's been from the LGBT community has a different impact on you for someone who's not, is obviously part of the work that we're trying to work with the Metropolitan Police Service in making sure that they can have considerations of those things, but in line with the duties that they must enact.
Now moving on to a London basis then. So the London Race Action Plan is, as I understand, is intended to help the Met's mission to become an anti-racist organisation and a service that is more inclusive, diverse and representative of London. But it only concentrates on one particular group, black Londoners. It mentions the word black 81 times. It doesn't mention Asian, Muslim, Hindu, Sikh, Jewish. And it's very focused on one particular group. How is that focus on one particular group, how is that trying to form a service that is more inclusive, diverse and fully representative of London as a whole?
Assembly Member Wilson, I think it's very important that in the context where we've had the Scarman review, the Macpherson report, the Casey review and the Daniels report, and on the back of the Charing Cross documentary that shocked us all last year, it's important that we recognise that there is a real issue, and this committee accepted the findings of the Casey review on race within the Metropolitan Police Service. I think there's obviously a lot of positive interventions that the Metropolitan Police Service are taking on the back of that, and the development of the LRAP and the work they're doing on a wider inclusive strategy is part of that. At the previous LPB Culture Committee, we also looked at the work they're doing to drive confidence in the LGBTQ plus community. I know that you'll know that obviously intersectionality is obviously a key consideration as well, recognised in the LRAP. So I think making sure that we're conscious of London's, the Metropolitan Police's particular context on the basis of the continued issues around trust and confidence within several groups in that, and the overall ambition that the Commissioner himself holds of having an inclusive, anti-racist Metropolitan Police Service is important.
Yeah, of course I understand the context. I know the history. I've seen that and very well aware of some of the things that have happened in the past and that have been absolutely wrong. Of course they have. Any kind of racism, any kind of discrimination, whether it's against any particular, is wrong, and that's not something that I would ever want to go back to. Of course it's not. What I want to see is an environment where everyone is treated the same, so the LRAP is backed up by the this 30 patterns of harm report, which is absolutely dripping in critical race theory, which is a highly contested ideology of its own, where concepts neutrality is effectively dismissed as being a worthy concept, and I just don't agree with that. I think if we want to be fair, if we want to be equal, we want to treat people the same correctly, then dressing it up in this highly ideological way, you can see why people see and perceive that perception of two-tier, because the very definition of anything being two-tier is treating people differently, as I said, based not on what they've done, but on what they are. Why is it so radical, or supposedly, to think that way? I mean, I'll close shortly, but I'll close with a quote from the black economist Thomas Sowell. If you've always believed that everyone should play by the same rules and be judged by the same standards, that would have gotten you labelled a radical 60 years ago, a liberal 30 years ago, and a racist today. Is that something that you recognise?
I think it's interesting that you would say that's our drive to have an inclusive Metropolitan Police Service is ideological. As I said at the start, I really strongly believe that whether you're a woman or a black person or from the LGBTQ plus community or a disabled person in a city as wonderful and as diverse as London, you should be able, if you are under the threat of harm or have been harmed, to have full confidence that when you call the Metropolitan Police Service, that you get the treatment that you deserve. I think, given as I've listed, the amount of reviews that we've had that shows independently across different political governments that is not the case, we cannot, and the Commissioner fully agrees with this, shy away from the work that needs to be done. And we've commissioned a Fairfield review this year to look at the progress that's being taken to make sure that we're continuing to move towards that aim.
You should be given the treatment you deserve, and the treatment you deserve is equal treatment, without fear or favour, everyone treated equally under the law.
Yes. Assembly Member Wilson, I think we are in agreement on that. However, what I would say is the status quo is not that.
Okay. Before we carry on, I'd like to welcome Year 12 politics students from the Royal Russell School in Croydon. Hey. Hello. You're very, very welcome. We're talking about diversity, equality and inclusion in the Met at the moment. Now we're going on to Assembly Member Ahmed.
Thank you, Chair. Deputy Mayor, you mentioned Casey, which, amongst other reports, was an absolute thorough root and branch investigation into practices within the Met, taking into account public opinion as well. Could you just tell us which community, according to Casey, has the least trust and confidence in the Metropolitan Police Service?
I can tell you that, as I've said, in a public attitude survey that MOPAC regularly does, because I'm conscious Casey was now 2 years ago, that 3 years ago, sorry, thank you, that we continue to look at this. We have seen improvements overall in trust and confidence in the Metropolitan Police Service. However, there is still lower trust and confidence within the black community, significantly the LGBTQ plus community. And if you're a victim of an offence within the disabled community as well. And we use that evidence to make sure that the Metropolitan Police Service themselves are driving interventions in those areas.
Bless you. Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Could I echo the condolences that have been sent to Henry Novak's family? As a parent of a child who is the same age as Henry was when his life was so tragically lost, it is an absolutely awful incident to have happened. And thank you, Deputy Mayor, for highlighting both the dignity and the way that the family have dealt with the issue. Paul Novak, on the steps of the court, actually asked for political leaders to work together to ease tensions. Sadly, despite that, we've seen figures here and abroad weaponise this young man's death and to try and drive division rather than answers. Southampton has already seen violent disorder as a result. Are MOPAC and the Met prepared for the public order potential consequences this kind of rhetoric could bring to London streets and for protecting communities that are scapegoated?
Yes, Assembly Member Ahmed, I strongly agree with your powerful words around how Paul Novak has conducted himself, and I can't imagine being a parent in that situation having to say those things. But I'm very profoundly grateful that he did, and I think that it's really important that we as political leaders adhere to his wishes. Obviously, and I've said previously, we continue to monitor any repercussions because of what's happened in Southampton and obviously separately in Belfast as well. We all know, and we've discussed in this committee previously, that there are heightened tensions on both sides of the political spectrum, and the police need to continue to be able to make sure that they are keeping London safe in that context. What I would say is that so far we haven't seen that disorder here. We continue to monitor it, obviously. We've had one protest in Westminster and it went off peacefully.
Thank you. And I'm sure that you will agree with me, Deputy Mayor, that it was absolutely disgusting and despicable to see a national party political leader, in my opinion, encourage and, in my opinion, incite the kind of things that we saw happen in Southampton, and he should be thoroughly ashamed of himself for ignoring what Paul Novak specifically asked people not to do.
Yeah. You're literally ignoring it right now.
Yeah, I think, I know we all take our roles really seriously as leaders and politicians to make sure that we're doing all we can to keep all Londoners safe.
Thank you. Right, as briefly as you can, Assembly Member Hamdash, thank you.
I just want to echo colleagues' words about, and your words, really powerful, about Henry Novak's death. It's utterly tragic, and it's another example of where police conduct has resulted in an innocent person dying. Now, we are having a conversation now about equality, diversity and anti-racism, but I wonder whether the missing conversation that we're having is about police practice when it comes to restraint. Sadly, this is not the first time that an innocent person has died under the custody of police whilst in restraint. In 24 and 25, 5 people died in police custody whilst under restraint. Do you think the conversation that we're having now is missing what we need to scrutinise really deeply, and that's police practice custody and restraint.
I think this is why it's really important that the IOPC look at this case and we take the recommendations for that. I recognise what you say, and the police have obviously quite important powers when it comes to use of force, and that they should be scrutinised for that. I actually had one of my thematic reviews, oversight reviews, doing a deep dive into the use of force in several areas, whether that be handcuffing, tasering, or restraint. Also conscious of the work that we're trying to move forward with the community scrutiny panels across London, and Hackney, the pilot for that, has looked at use of force within that. So making sure there's also local scrutiny on issues of that, because it's really important when they have great responsibilities in this area that they're enacting those in the safest of ways.
I'm going to bring Assemblymember Best in next, and then I'll come to Assemblymember Roberts after that.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor, do you believe Met officers are able to make evidence-based decisions and distinguish effectively between suspects, victims and witnesses during those fast-paced moments in policing?
Obviously, and I know we've discussed this previously in this committee, the police are often put in situations that ordinary civilians are not, and we need to be aware of that they have to take split-second decisions, and when using that, and in some cases using equipment or force to be able to do that is complicated. I think it's all Metropolitan Police obviously have training, and if they're in specialist units, TSG, firearms, otherwise there is also additional training in that.
Just to come back to this point on restraint, how do the police at the moment distinguish between a potential suspect who is in pain or injured and someone that's trying it on effectively? Is there a way in which they have specific training for those situations to make sure that they aren't restraining people that are in danger? I mean, in this case, the horrific thing is, it seems to all of us it was quite obvious, but it can be more nuanced. And I think to go on from that learning, that's the thing that I'd like to be reassured of in future.
Yeah, to reiterate, Assemblymember Best, I think this is why it's really important that there's an IOPC investigation fully looking at all of this, so that, whilst we have seen clips, it's really important that the full thing is looked at and the recommendations are taken forward in that, in terms of the work that we've been doing, looking at the use of handcuffs, and how that's enacted in London. I think there's some real positive conversations about that with the Metropolitan Police Service.
Thanks. Is it something that we could help with with a more substantial use of tasers, for example? Because often I think that officers are quick to use handcuffs to restrain because many officers don't want to use tasers, or we don't have enough taser permits. But if they had a taser, they have a direct threat there of why the suspect needs to remain calm and stay with them and not move or run.
My view is that we should I think we are renowned internationally of having a police service that is locked into the Pelian principles, that we police by consent, and I see that as a positive. I think that there are lessons to be learned in the use of tasers, and actually I think one of the things that I really took from the thematic was the measures that the police service take in the use of tasers is actually really positive, and could actually be extended to other uses of force areas. But no, it's not my opinion that there should be an increase of use or carrying of tasers.
Okay, thank you. And Can I ask, what oversight and scrutiny does MOPAC apply to the design and methodology of diversity, equality and inclusion training within the Met?
I'll start, and then if I... Yes, so the Metropolitan Police has training which is called New Met for London for Everyone training, and it also has additional courses for leaders. This is something that we've scrutinised both through MOPAC's investment advisory and monitoring meeting, but also MOPAC officers and LPB members have attended those training sessions as observers and fed back to MPS.
Have you ever had any reason to raise concern or questions around that training?
I have definitely fed back reflections on the training.
Could you share that?
I mean, I think it's really important that the training itself is not taken as the only output. And I think it's really important that post, and this is something that has actively been enacted, that post that training, the impact of that training is assessed, and how through the personal development process and appraisals that the police are doing, how that is regularly understood and assessed.
So your concern is not, or what the issues you raised are not around the training itself or the material. It's about the monitoring of outcomes after that fact.
The other thing within the training specifically, I think there is perhaps I have encouraged the police to look at how more community involvement can be involved in that training, to give officers real expert by experience insight into that training. So it's not just facilitated. We also talked to, Kenny might want to add, but we also talked to them about how independent facilitators also could be used at a greater rate, and that's something that's been taken forward, I think, through the leadership training.
Yeah, so two points I would add. One is about the quality of the delivery. And this was more at the outset in the train-the-trainer model, and whether that was working as effectively as it could, which was something that the Metropolitan Police took on. And then secondly, we have raised, through having sat through some of these specific behaviours which have been witnessed by people. I'm not going to get into the specifics because those are sort of HR style things, but those are also some of the concerns which have been raised directly with them on that. It is part of the wider all 3-day programme, so it is part of that. It's not a standalone kind of thing. It's part of the wider way in which the Met is trying to bring its culture and improve its overall performance together.
Yeah, I've heard from officers a concern about asking questions and frank discussion in those training sessions, and I just wondered if that's something you'd looked at as well.
So that's so I think that is what I was referring to. So I think there's...
Yeah, thank you. I think that's in terms of, you said, reporting them to HR, right? But
So I think... So in terms of behaviours, yes, they have raised concerns.
Yeah.
But I don't think we certainly haven't had concerns that the people have been able to have frank and open discussions. It's been the tone of some of it.
Okay, thanks. And I just wanted to ask Deputy Mayor whether you agree with the Policing Minister, Sarah Jones, when she said that the current anti-racism guidance, it gives the wrong impression, and former Home Secretary Jack Straw when he said it's gone too far. Do you agree with those comments?
I mean, I think obviously guidance is always important to review. I know that the work of the national...
Sorry, the question was just, do you agree with those comments?
I don't think that it's gone too far in the context in terms of the Metropolitan Police Service.
Okay.
Because
and do you agree with the Policing Minister, Sarah Jones, that it gives the wrong impression?
I would need to understand the wider context of what she said.
It gives the wrong impression to police about how they should be policing.
Doing work on ensuring that we're an inclusive Metropolitan Police Service.
On the anti-racism guidance, she believes it gives the wrong
on
impression.
the guidance?
Yeah.
I think that there is a live discussion about whether the national guidance needs reviewing or not. I
So
don't
you
think
agree
that
with
takes
her?
away from the importance of the work.
So you agree with her?
I agree with her that the
You
national
agree with her
guidance
that it
needs
gives
to
it, that the
continue to be looked
anti-racism
at.
guidance gives the wrong impression, but you don't agree with Jack Straw that it goes too far? Yeah.
Not in context of the work that we're doing in the Metropolitan Police Service, no.
Okay, thank you. We've got Assemblymember Roberts followed by Assemblymember Wilson. We are running very late.
It
okay?
is a very short intervention, Chair. The reason I raised this, and notwithstanding the IPC investigation which will follow, I was concerned by the suggestion, perhaps unintentional, in Assemblymember Hamdash's original statement that this was a death in police custody. Both the medical professionals and the presiding judge at the trial and the trial pathologist said that no amount of intervention would have saved Henry Novak's life, and we should be incredibly careful about using terms like death in police custody when no police action could have saved Henry's life.
Yep. Thank you. Thank you for that clarification, and that will be taken on board. Assemblymember Wilson.
Very quickly then, you mentioned or acknowledged that the NPCC's guidance is going to be reviewed. Given that, and given the exchange we just had with Assemblymember Best, kind of halfway indicating that you think that's appropriate, will MOPAC require the Met to assess whether any of its training or guidance or policies in this sphere could affect officers' judgment at critical incidents like this and therefore need to be reviewed? Or are we just business as usual?
Assemblymember Wilson, I think it's really important that we recognise that our business as usual is scrutinising the Metropolitan Police Service on the need for continued, they've made significant improvement, but continued culture change throughout the Metropolitan Police Service, and that's what we will do. Obviously, when individual incidents happen, it's really important that we have the independent office of the IOPC to look at those incidents. We regularly meet with them and HMIC to take that wider learning, and we'll continue to do so.
A review instigated from MOPAC then. Fair enough. Back to the Chair.
Thank you. I'm going to have a 10-minute break now, or just under actually. If we can meet back here at 11:45, please. So for a short adjournment. Welcome back to the Police and Crime Committee meeting. We will now continue our question and answer session with the Deputy Mayor for Policing and Crime and the Director of Strategy and MPS Oversight from MOPAC. So we're now going to be talking about shoplifting, and we're going to have to speed up, colleagues, a little bit. And we're starting off with Assembly Member Desai.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon. My first question is to you, Kenny. Data published by the Met shows that the number of shoplifting offences in London has increased by approximately 27% in the last 3 months. What analysis has MOPAC undertaken to understand this increase? And more importantly, what action has been taken in response?
Thank you very much. So I would just say that in the 12 months to May 2026, that actually shows that there's been a 2% decrease compared to the previous 12 months. So I think that shows that the tide is potentially starting to turn in this regard. We obviously did some work with King's College previously, which looked at what the cost of living crisis would mean for crime across London as a whole. That did show that we expected violence to increase, and it also showed that we would expect, as a result of how difficult the cost of living crisis has been for everyone, for acquisitive crime to go up in that way. So again, that is part of what we think has happened there. We also know that there's organised criminality, there's substance dependency, all of that, which feeds into this sort of crime. Furthermore, I would say that we know that whilst there may have been an increase in shoplifting over the previous while, there has also been an increase in reporting through Operation Retail into the Met, as the Metropolitan Police have made it easier for retailers to actually report crime in. So not saying it's a good thing, but it is a good thing that the Met is aware of more of this and is able to take action on it. So I think all of that is what, over that period, will have seen the shoplifting figures go up. But as I say, the last 12 months until May, the end of May, has actually seen a decrease, and we're hopeful that that means that the tide is starting to turn in that regard.
Okay. So my other question then is, what progress has been made towards the commitments in the Mayor's Police and Crime Plan to cut retail crime? Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Assembly Member Desai. Yes, in the Police and Crime Plan, I particularly was passionate about making sure that we included a real focus on neighbourhood crime and shoplifting being a key indicator of that, alongside other volume crimes like phone theft. So it's been really a key part of the work we've been doing. We've been working with both myself and the Deputy Mayor for Business to have regular roundtables with the business community. I also had a great walk around with Assembly Member Ahmed with their local bid, and that's illustrative of the kind of work that we're doing regularly to understand concerns of businesses. And from that, we've had really positive outcomes, both in increasing the information sharing between retailers and the Metropolitan Police Service, so getting, it's procedural, but getting agreements in place that they can share data. Also, as previously mentioned, investing in technology, so platforms that can make sure that it's easy for retailers to upload evidence, but it's also having the capability of assessing what evidence might lead to prosecutions as well. So that platform can do that and then give that to the police. We've had ongoing conversations and got 2 more roundtables coming up with retailers about that and how that's progressing. It's really important that we make sure now that the legislation has been, the previous legislation around anything under £200 not being prosecuted has been removed.
Sorry, that's inaccurate. Can we make sure that we don't say inaccurate things like that?
Sorry, the legislation has been changed so that...
It wasn't that you couldn't prosecute under £200, though.
So what was that?
I'm sorry, can we finish and then I'll bring you in so you can correct it?
so that we can make sure that there is a real focus on shoplifting. We've obviously had the focused work in making sure that we, both in Westminster but across London, seen an uplift in town centre areas, so that we're really trying to drive this shift, as Kenny outlined, to turn the tide on shoplifting.
Also, my briefing note tells me that there's also some more specific work being done. There's a retail crime strategy, I understand?
So the Met has refreshed their retail crime strategy recently because...
That's the next question, actually.
Oh, okay, sorry. Okay.
Of the focus work they want to do.
All right, I'll leave it at the chair.
Okay. Did you want to clarify
Yeah, the
something?
Deputy Mayor just said under the previous legislation you couldn't prosecute and shoplifting under £200, which is completely false. So was that, does she want to correct the record or does she not understand the law?
I'm happy to correct that it wasn't not prosecutable, but the guidance was not to pursue, and that this was felt by partners who have effectively
What guidance existed
decriminalised it.
saying not to pursue the law?
Sorry?
What guidance existed to say not to pursue the
We
law?
changed the... what's the specific guidance, Kenny?
So it was about making it low value shoplifting, which downgraded the level of it, so that it was like. No, I didn't say
That's
that.
not working. Can you swap?
Yes, I'm willing to correct that point, but it's our analysis...
Sorry, you need to correct 2 points now because every time you speak you're saying something that's not true.
Well,
there was no
because you're interrupting me, so I can't continue my point.
No, but you said that there was guidance to say not to prosecute under £200. That is completely inaccurate and false.
The change has meant that there's now legislation that clearly says that we should be prosecuting under £200.
The legislation previously said that we should prosecute. You're
It
just not, you're
classified
not
it as
stating the
low.
law.
It classified it largely as low value shoplifting,
Yeah.
which we believe was a signal, and that the research demonstrated that a number of people who were acting in that field felt that they could act with impunity. So we did feel
That's
that was a
completely
contributor.
different,
So it was a
yes.
contributory
You're saying
factor
there
to
was
the increase in shoplifting which happened over that time as a result. And as a result, the change which was brought in through the recent
So,
legislation.
Kenny, what you're saying, and that's completely true, is there was a misunderstanding of what should be prosecuted and what should not. In 2015, the ASB Sentencing Act was brought in to make sure that we streamlined the process so that we didn't have criminals opting to go to the Crown Court and continually slowing down the procedure for small amounts of crime when actually what you have is 20% of offenders causing 80% of crimes, and it was meant to streamline that process and make sure that they were prosecuted as quickly as possible and put behind bars for the low value threshold, as opposed to having to pursue a higher sentence which was not going through the courts and getting kicked out. It remains to be seen whether actually now that the maximum this has been lifted, whether that's actually going to help put people behind bars, or more serious crimes are going to be viewed as being put in priority, which you would assume they might be. But just what you've said is a view, and that's absolutely acceptable as a view. What I've said is a view. What the Deputy Mayor stated as fact was two things that were completely false, and I'm concerned that she either doesn't understand the law or is actively lying.
No, so I think the main point.
Kenny, that's not for you.
No, but I think the main point
I've said
that
I've accepted that what you've said is correct. The Mayor just said two things that were inaccurate. You've said an opinion, and you can have an opinion. The Deputy Mayor just stated two things as fact that are completely inaccurate.
Emma, I would never try and mislead this committee, and I said that if I've been incorrect, that I apologise for that. I obviously understand the law, and I used the term that I shouldn't have. That's okay, but I really think that my point was the analysis in why we've seen an uptick now under new legislation in
we
positive
can come back
outcomes.
to this later. I think
And
I'm
we
going to
have
come back to this
seen-
on you later, but it was the
I'm
record
sorry,
that
Chair,
we're
but
correct.
I'd like to respond.
No, but it's somebody else's time, and we can do this in a bit. We can do this in a few minutes, I promise.
Okay. Assembly Member Wilson.
Thank you, Chair. So a year ago at this committee, you said that you were working with the top 5 most affected boroughs to look at how we can design out the crime. Could you give any update on how that work is going?
I think that was on robbery, not shoplifting. But so that was in relation to, I think, the work we're doing in tech with tech companies to look at things that they could do on their phones. There is progress on that. The Commissioner has recently worked with Apple to make sure that there is progress in what they're doing on their phones to make them less reconnectable to the network.
Well, according to the transcript that I've got in front of me, it was very much in the question of retail crime and shoplifting. We're segmenting the offence around shoplifting. We know that shoplifting tends to be prolific. Operation Yamatar, perhaps tell us
Operation
about that.
Yamatar is the work we're doing London-wide. To work alongside the Metropolitan Police Service, local authorities and drug outreach workers from the voluntary sector to improve referral pathways into rehabilitation. We've actually had some really positive outcomes on the back of that, both increase in arrests on drug dealing, but also increase in referrals into the use of rehab and other things.
Okay, fine. But again, the transcript talks of regular meeting with businesses to make sure we're getting their perspective, both in terms of what they feel the police needs to do more of, but also what they can do themselves into reporting and designing out crime. We want to work with them in partnership as well as other retailers. So
yeah, absolutely.
Retail crime, shoplifting.
Yeah, absolutely. So we've had those conversations with retailers, both in roundtables but also on local visits. We had a recent visit to Lewisham where we saw the technology that the Metropolitan Police Service is using to work with retailers to drive up that, but also talking to retailers about how they can help. They've seen some great examples in terms of redesigning of shops, both in businesses including Greggs and Boots, to actually how to lay out shops better to prevent crime, but also the work we've been doing with them to make sure that things are uploaded, that members of staff are given leave to, if it goes to court, to take that court action forward. So definitely.
Greg's having to lock up sandwiches and drinks behind the cabinet. That seems quite drastic and almost feels a bit like victim blaming, but there we go. I'd like to ask about there's been a series of kind of smash and grab raids on jewellers, and in particular the case of antiques dealer Ian Towning, who subsequently decided to close his shop, leave London after violent robbery left him traumatised. Is this something that should be of grave concern if people are reaching a stage where they feel it's no longer viable running that business, running that shop in London because of this these attacks, these crimes? And is that something that that concerns you? And what would you say to address those fears that actually no, it is still worth running a shop selling high-value products in London? It is safe to do so.
Obviously, all crime concerns me, and it's really important. This is why we're doing this work. This is why we're having a focus on retail crime. We've got Operation Retail that looks at organised crime behind retail, and also the work we're doing, especially in areas like the West End, where there are high-end retailers, to double the amount of offices in that area using new technology like drones and e-bikes. The Mayor's investment in that, it's definitely a concern. We want to be an exceptionally prosperous city. We know that working with retailers, and the other thing that I would say is retailers want to make sure that they are talking about the positive interactions that they're having with the police, but also the positive outcomes that we're having, because it's really important that the message is out there that London is a safe city, that London is a prosperous city, and it's a place to invest. Definitely.
And I would say that the Met really are focused on this. I think it was in March. I think it was March anyway. There was a there was a gang which had been linked to a series of smash and grabs, as you call them, across London, which was actually sentenced for a considerable number of years between them, and the Met had done such good work into that space. I believe they all pled guilty when they were in court, and this is something which is high up the Met's priority list, because these aren't just amateur people who are going out and doing this. This is organised criminality, so it is very much on the Met's radar in that regard.
That's good to hear. And just on a wider point about...
Very briefly, we are really running out of time.
Trust and confidence, and everyone wants to have confidence in the police. Would it be better, if you had £7 million to spend, would it be better to spend that on telling the world that everything's fine and dandy, or would it be better to spend that £7 million on keeping police station front counters open for another year so people can actually genuinely have confidence in policing in London?
As the Commissioner has said himself, and I believe Matt Twist, who is the DAC for neighbourhood crime, he wouldn't row back on the decisions taken on front counters, even if there was more money available, because they want to focus on making sure that there are officers in neighbourhoods to make sure that the criminal activity is tackled and arrests are happening, especially on high volume issues like we're discussing today.
Being a clear manifesto commitment from the Mayor. There we go.
Thank you. Assembly Member Roberts.
Thank you, Chair. And we wait to see whether the next round of tough choices means a reversion back to the original plan to close even more front counters, in contradiction to the Mayor's original manifesto commitment. Back on shoplifting. Is the current rate of positive outcomes, and specifically on the rate of positive outcomes for shoplifting offences, satisfactory? And what specific actions are being taken to improve outcome rates for shoplifting offences?
So we would always want to see things being better, but in terms of positive outcomes, over the last 12 months, it's increased from 8 to 15%, and at the end of Q4 for 25-26, just in terms of volumes, that was up 78%, Assembly Member Roberts. So as I said, I do think we are starting to see considerable improvements in this. We would always want to see, and I'm sure you would want to see more in that regard. What is being done to increase that? I mean, I think the best example there is exactly what the Deputy Mayor talked about earlier, in terms of this the new platform that the Metropolitan Police is trying in a number of areas, which allows retailers, both large and small, to submit packages to the Met, which includes pictures, ready-made statements, almost intel packages to the police, which allows them to use either RFR or link series of things and actually bring that through. I think that really is a very positive development in this regard. It took, the Deputy Mayor raised this specifically with Assistant Commissioner Twist last July about the need to look for speed in terms of how that was brought in, because we did foresee that there would be genuine benefits in that regard. And as a result of that and some really excellent work from the Metropolitan Police, we are starting to see the positive outcome rate for shoplifting increase.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor, anything to add?
No, I mean, it's definitely, I think that it's an area that the Commissioner said himself, because of the previous need to focus on violent and crimes and homicide crimes, and making sure that they're building the Met's foundations, that now that we've made significant progress in those areas, and whilst never being complacent about the need to continue in those, we're able to have a greater focus on these areas. I'm conscious that these areas are high volume crimes, that they are starting from a low base, and we need to continue to drive that. But that is something I'm very passionate about, because I know the effect it has on communities.
Thank you. I mean, was it? Did I hear correctly? Kenny, you said 15% is the current rate. I mean, that does mean that 85% is falling through the gaps. So
yeah, and that's why, as I said, that's why this is a focus. That's why we're continuing to talk to retailers. That's why we're bringing in new technologies. That's why we're looking at specific operations in town centres to continue that work.
Yeah. Just over the last couple of months, we've seen something really quite new and disturbing happening. We saw the looting of Marks and Spencer's in Clapham in late March and in early April 26. The M&S retail director I hope I'm pronouncing this correctly, Thinis criticised both the government and City Hall, stating that retail crime is getting worse, not better. He highlighted a concerning trend of brazen, organised aggression, noting that the staff and security guards had been assaulted during these spates of disorder. In the recent response to a question which I asked of the Mayor, he said that the Deputy Mayor for Business and Growth and that you will be meeting Marks and Spencer soon to discuss in further detail that particular issue. Has that meeting taken place?
No, it's next month.
Next month?
Yeah.
Okay.
What I would say, can I just clarify?
Yes, of course.
That actually the Met confirmed that they did not see looting or widespread criminal damage. They did see antisocial behaviour, but it's important as well because it's an important point that we are really conscious about. Is that the police are now working with social media companies because these things were amplified through social media, this level of disorder, and it's really important that social media companies have a role in stopping that footage circulating at volume.
Yeah.
So that's a really important point to pick up. But as I've said previously, we will be meeting with retailers, including M&S. You're right. The Deputy Mayor for Business has already met with them because we want to make sure this is a focus area for us. We want to make sure that we are driving change in this area.
Do you have any concern about the optics? This all happened in late March and early April, and you're going to be meeting them next month, which is July. And I appreciate that there were local elections and all of that, so there may have been a pre-election period where you weren't able to meet and all of this business. But that to me doesn't speak of a degree of urgency.
Howard met them directly. Sorry,
no,
the Deputy Mayor for Business met them directly after them. We've had discussions post that. We continue to work with retailers. We're meeting with them next month. It is a continued priority to us. It's a conversation that we're picking up. We picked up the actions from the conversation with them. So, yes, it has been taken as an urgency, and it is a continual conversation. We want to have an ongoing relationship with the business sector to making sure that we're meeting their safety concerns.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to labour the point too much, but you are the Deputy Mayor for Policing and Crime, which you've said, yes, I know that, but if I may just finish the point. It's the fact that there's been a meeting with the Deputy Mayor for Business and Growth, but that's laudable. But it does seem to be taking a while longer to get, because this is an issue of criminality. It's not really an issue of business and growth. It's about crime in the capital. Really quite shocking scenes played out on social media, which, as you said, we need to make sure that the social media giants aren't able to disseminate this because it just encourages others. But this is something which Londoners have seen played out on their television screens. And that was in late March, early April, and it's still you haven't had that meeting yet. Do you see the difficulty with the optics?
I see the optics in which you're framing. However, what I will say is... How would you
frame them?
I would say that I am part of a team. Me and Howard have worked closely on this issue since I've started. It's something that we're really passionate about and we're working together on. We'll be meeting with retailers, including M&S, in July. I've had meetings with several huge companies in London, and we will continue to focus on this because it is a key priority for London. We're starting to make progress, we're getting positive outcomes, but we know that there's further to go and we want to make sure we're driving that change.
Okay, fair enough. How are you going to prevent such large mobs and protect shops, businesses in general from being, and indeed Londoners as a whole, from being victims of such brazen, organised aggression?
Absolutely, and the characterisation of organised is really important in this. So this is some of the work that we're doing through Operation Retail, Operation Zoradon, and the Met's retail crime strategy that we are obviously feeding into and have oversight to, working closely with businesses for our regular meetings in the robbery reduction partnership meetings. We have one of the companies I have met with is Nike, and they showed me some very disturbing footage of swarming. But that's exactly why the technology that Kenny mentioned previously around using facial recognition, using platforms that can upload CCTV and connect to other businesses' CCTV and put together really strong cases of prolific reoffenders of these offences is so important, so that we can get the positive outcomes that we're starting to see through the courts and continue to drive this crime down.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. I've got 2 interventions on this question. They must be very quick and short answers, please. First of all, Assembly Member Ahmed.
Thank you, Chair. And before I actually get to my question, because the Assembly member raised the issue of Clapham, which is in my constituency, I really do need to thank you, Deputy Mayor, for correcting him, because it is really important that we're clear about this. Yeah. I was there with the police. And, you know, I absolutely take my hat off to the officers with the work that they did immediately afterwards and to prevent any further issues occurring over the next few days. The fact that they spoke to parents, the businesses, the reassurance that they provided. Can we be really clear? There was no looting in Clapham that day. It was antisocial behaviour. I was told by senior officers on the day that the amount of, it was shoplifting amounting at that point to £23. That is not looting.
We're really running late.
I'm sure your residents would be thrilled.
Can I just go back to my question? So I don't care who. No, everything isn't fine. It was antisocial behaviour that was dealt with.
On this.
And I appreciate if you weren't smirking, Assemblymember Roberts. I think there was an excellent amount of work that was done by the police to reassure both businesses and residents. Nobody's not taking it seriously, but it was not looting, and we need to be really clear about it.
And now,
my question,
quickly.
and I don't care which of you to actually answer this, but we talked earlier about AI and technology. Both, again, in my constituency, in Brixton and in Peckham, live facial recognition technology has been used very effectively to identify, a lot of crime, but including prolific shoplifters as well. Is this something that you would support being rolled out across London, particularly around this level of crime, around the issue of shoplifting?
Very briefly, please.
I'm always brief, Chair.
Oh, Kenny! So, Kenny, just say yes, because it is excellent, and then we'll finish it.
So the short answer is yes.
Thank you.
And
Thank you so much. Thank you. Assembly Member Desai, very, very quickly. We're running so short.
Yeah, it's about assault on shop workers. Are the figures going up for this year, or are they going down? And I should say recorded assaults.
Can you follow up in writing on the latest figures?
This committee and the Assembly as a whole has expressed concern in the past. I brought a motion to the Assembly some 2 years ago.
Yeah, and it's really important that we track it. It's a new offence, but we'll write to you.
Thank you.
If you can put that in writing. Kenny, I cut you off very, very quickly, beyond your yes, but really quickly.
No, so I was going to say it already is rolled out across London. It's just most of it is a mobile deployment based on intelligence of where they think they'll get the best answer. And it's really important to say, because I know there's a lot of narrative around this, but when we track this through the public attitude survey, frequently between sort of 70 and 80% of Londoners actually back the use of live facial recognition, and it is really making a genuine difference on the streets.
Thank you. Yeah, I think it's brilliant. Thank you. Last question on this section, which, if you could be brief, Assembly Member Best, please.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I just wanted to fully understand that you understand the ASB Crime and Policing Act of 2014 in relation to shoplifting. Could you just explain what the Act said about shoplifting?
So it moved...
Sorry, you haven't been elevated to the Deputy Mayor just yet, Kenny.
Sorry, can you... what's the specific of your question?
So in relation to shoplifting, what did the 2014 Act say about prosecuting shoplifting?
Are you going back to the high volume, low volume point that we were on before?
No, I'm asking you, the 2014 Anti-Social Behaviour Police and Crime Act, what did it say about prosecuting shoplifting? And Kenny, it's honestly, it's like exam season. I feel like the invigilator. You can't whisper the answer to the Deputy Mayor.
Sorry. So I think it is important because the difference was on the level in terms of aggravated or non-aggravated.
So let me phrase it a different way to help you. If if somebody hypothetically stole under £200 worth of goods after the 2014 Act, what happened to them? What could legally happen to prosecute them?
I mean, it could obviously progress to court and it could obviously be sentenced, but I think the point is it wasn't seen as an aggravating issue, so had a lower outcome. And the analysis and the opinion was that this has led to.
Do you know why it was? Do you know why that change was brought in?
So it was brought in.
No, Kenny, honestly, you're not the deputy mayor. Okay, do you know why that change was brought in?
But it's not.
But Kenny, you're not the deputy mayor.
Sorry, Kenny, I appreciate it. He's trying to be helpful. However, I will answer. Because of the points that you were rightly making earlier about making sure that there was a good prospect in terms of outcome and the use of Crown Court. Obviously, we have now a significant issue with backlogs in the courts and overpopulations in prisons, and this is something that through our work on the London Criminal Justice Board we are taking forward at pace. However, the impact has been and has felt to be that there was a deprioritisation in terms of shoplifting.
Did the police? And I agree that it is on the police, and actually within the Met, a lot of forces managed to use the Act really well and get to terms with prolific shoplifters. In many areas of the Met, that didn't seem to happen, and there did seem to be this deprioritisation. But as Met guidance, were you making it clear even before the Act change that police should be prosecuting?
I mean, I wasn't in role.
No, you were. The changes only just happened.
Oh, the new change in legislation? No,
so previously, were you making sure that the Met knew they should be prosecuting?
Absolutely. This is why we prioritised.
Because earlier you didn't know that you could prosecute. So I'm just saying.
Emma, I've corrected that point.
Okay, so you
think
were
that's
making it clear that they should prosecute.
You're being a bit disingenuous now. I really think that I'm trying to say honestly to the committee, this is exactly why we have prioritised this issue in the police and crime plan. This is exactly why we've put in additional investment. This is exactly why we're trying to use new technologies to drive this issue. We are agreeing it is not in a good state, and we are agreeing that we are working hard to improve it.
Because I want to come onto the court thing, because this is actually really serious. And the reason why I want you to understand, or to make sure you understand it, is because we've introduced this change in law at a time where we've got the most historical high of backlog in the courts. Now, what's happened with this change of law has meant that shoplifting is now classified as general theft, and then you can go, obviously, and that has to go to court. That's taken the maximum sentence up to 7 years. I don't see somebody going to prison for 7 years for shoplifting under £200. But what I do see happening is delayed justice. And what you see when you have 20% of offenders committing 80% of offences is actually the system that we had in place, and where people in the police were using it right, we could target those offenders. And yes, they were going to prison for maybe 2 months at a time, but they'd go to prison at 2 months, they'd go straight back in. Now, what we're going to have is prolific shoplifters awaiting justice for a year, able to terrorise their high streets. I'm really concerned about that. Is that something that you and the Mayor are looking at?
Absolutely, we are looking at that. We are really, and it outlines this in the police and crime plan, we really need to improve the criminal justice system to improve its outcomes for victims. We are doing a lot of work across the partnership, police, CPS, the courts, everyone in the pipeline, probation, to make sure that we are driving positive outcomes throughout the criminal justice system. None of us, the Independent Victims Commissioner is doing the work as well, none of us want to see these outcomes delayed. It's really important that we tackle the backlog. We're looking at various interventions we can take throughout that system to improve it. This is something I'm really passionate about, and I'm working closely with government to improve, because I agree, and that is partly why, and I've mentioned it before, it's really important that the Met is using technology with retailers to make sure that they have the highest level.
I appreciate that. The Chair wants us to move on.
You made a point about prolific offenders.
No, I'm saying I appreciate that, and so what I'm going to say to you, Deputy Mayor, is something I believe very seriously about, and could you give a full written answer on how the cliff edge of these delays in justice are going to be dealt with? Because you're giving a full answer, but the Chair wants to move on.
Yep, that's fine.
Fine. Thank you. We'll look forward to that, and I'll make sure the whole committee gets it. We're now moving on to the Met's call handler work culture. We only have 20 minutes for this and the following section, so if we can be as concise as properly. Assembly Member Hamdash.
Thank you. So just to the Deputy Mayor, what assessment has MOPAC made of the current misconduct reporting culture within Met Command and Control?
Obviously, we look at all of the police's misconduct, but we have had conversations with the Metropolitan Police, particularly about the call centre. It's obviously really important, given the nature of the calls in which call handlers deal with, and the volumes, that we make sure that there's a positive culture in that unit, and they're able to be supported to have the highest levels of professional standards. And this is something that the Met have established a particular programme of activity to improve culture and make sure that all colleagues feel safe, respected and supported.
I'm conscious that we're talking about another part of the Met having culture problems. Now, do you get a sense whether other forces around the country have had similar issues with call centres, and whether there's any learnings or best practice that we need to be taking up?
We obviously regularly talk to HMIC to look at what cross-learnings we can take. I mean, we're really conscious of the work that call handlers are doing. I actually went to visit Crime Stoppers and the positive work that they do, and actually the positive culture that I saw around supervision, support, and making sure that Metropolitan Police Service are doing that as well. As I've mentioned, they've established a new programme to increase the focus on improving the culture in METCC.
I mean, I'll just say I've done call centre work myself. It's hard enough as it is without having a toxic culture. So I really, really support us ironing this out. So how is MOPAC working with the Met to ensure genuinely anonymous reporting routes exist and are trusted by staff? And what evidence do you have that staff feel safe to report wrongdoing?
So the Mayor has invested an additional £2.5 million into METCC to improve both culture but also outcomes. We've seen an improvement in the response time, not where I want it to be, I want to be clear on that, but from 69% to 81% for 999 calls. But internally as well, I understand that's the focus of your question, making sure that we can continue to oversee the Met Upstanders programme, which has, from its inception, improved from 400 reports to 1,400 reports in 24-25. They're also developing a new app which will allow officers to report allegations directly and anonymously as well. Also, something that I've really heard from Met officers is making sure that they get the victim support that they need. So it's encouraging that the Met are creating this victim support team as well with named caseworkers, as we'd expect for all victims, and making sure that the work arrangements for those victims are understood as well in terms of flexible working or temporary redeployment.
Great, thank you. So Matt Dukes, the Metropolitan Deputy Commissioner at the last London Policing Board, said that a staff survey of call handlers is undergoing. Will you commit to looking at those responses and reporting back to us about any planned actions from that staff survey?
100%.
Thank you.
What oversight does MOPAP have of decisions to reinstate officers or staff dismissed for misconduct?
Conscious of time, directly none. These are overseen by the Police Appeals Tribunal, so it's separate. It's a separate process. We do the administration for the appeals process, but it's a separate process to us.
Oh, that's interesting. So since the publication of a new Met for London Phase 2 in December 25, what specific new measures has the Met introduced to strengthen its misconduct processes, and how is MOPAC monitoring their impact?
So I know that we've discussed this previously at the report at the committee, but the use of new vetting regulations started the first case of this very serious case of sexual misconduct and neglect of duty happened in March 26. Obviously, as previously mentioned, encouragement of more reporting and trying to take a public health approach in detecting behaviours early on. We regularly oversee that. I have updates from the relevant DAC on the work they're doing. This is something as well that we've looked at in the LPB Culture Committee, both in terms of vetting and misconduct, but also issues of disproportionality in the misconduct process too.
Thank you. I know the Unified Operational Analytics, i.e. the Palantir contract, was actually very, very effective in getting all the different programmes together and rooting out officers that were not how we would want them to be. So is the cancelling of that particular contract going to have an effect on this particular area?
Chair, I just think it's really important that we clarify that that was one part of the proposed procurement, that CSIE is a pilot that the Metropolitan Police Service have undertaken, so is live, and the work that you would have seen and LPB members have seen and myself and MOPAC officers have seen in terms of bringing together data systems around the internal cultural areas of the Metropolitan Police Service is CSIE. We are in active conversations, obviously, because that was meant to be a pilot. It was meant to be limited. We are in active conversations now with the Metropolitan Police about the next stages of how they take that forward.
Yeah, because that work that was undertaken has really made a difference and has rooted out an awful lot of issues with the culture of certain officers, hasn't it?
I think there are positive outcomes from the pilot, and we've looked at that, and we need to understand now that that pilot is coming to an end, how we take that forward.
Okay, well, we'll be watching that. And a massive shout out to Crime Stoppers as well. I'm very, very impressed with them. I think we all are. Very good. Well, Benali, you and I have whisked through this, so I'm now relieved. I think we'll get through the next one in time. So now we're going to be talking about the Met's digital upgrade and cyber security. And questioning will start, please, from Assembly Member Roberts.
Thank you, Chair. Just regarding earlier comments, I'm sure that those people that were assaulted in Clapham and the police officers and the security staff and all of the staff workers that were assaulted will be delighted that there was no looting, and I'm happy to correct that. Can I ask, what oversight has MOPAC applied to the Met's proposed £21.9 million pipeline notices to upgrade its digital capabilities to ensure that they represent the right balance of operational need, improved outcomes, measurable savings, and something we've heard a lot about today, public value for money for Londoners?
Thank you. Yeah, so this is obviously something that I'm actually proud of that we've done with the Metropolitan Police, having a pipeline of consideration coming forward rather than individual decisions just coming through. So we have a longer term view of making sure that we know what contracts are coming to an end and what they might want to do in future. There are currently 20 notices issued in this area. However, only 2 of those currently have come through for decision through IAM. So that is digital forensics, Magnet products and services, and OS alternate.
It's open source intelligence.
Open source intelligence network, which is being used to look at social media and vetting and licensing. So those are the 2 things that we've already looked at, and then there's an additional 18 in the pipeline coming forward.
Just on these additional 18, and given that we were talking about procurement issues, how are you assuring yourself that problems don't occur again in other digital procurement exercises, so particularly with an eye on this particular suite of proposals?
Yeah, so obviously routinely through the process we question on value for money, what is the bankable savings, how will this technology be used, wider considerations in terms depending on what the contract is for, operations or impact on staffing, and we will continue to do that. You know, we really take this obviously on a case-by-case basis, obviously through the scheme of delegation, whether things are to note because of their impact, but obviously if they're over the scheme of delegation being novel or contentious or over £500,000, making sure that we have a more in-depth oversight of that. We're talking about establishing, due to the level of pace needed on these contracts and others, having a dedicated working group. Already MOPAC officers obviously sit on EXCO and for particular programs, including command and control, sit on weekly meetings to have deeper dives on those. But there's obviously a scale of contracts and how we do that.
Can I just clarify one thing, which is the list of programmes, it's a pipeline, so those are procurements which may or may not happen. It's to give an indication to the market the stuff may come forward. Yeah. And equally, they may change significantly, and the values which are outlined may change. So it's just a point of clarity. So.
Yep, that's perfectly fine. Thank you for that. Just on this 500,000 limit, of course, I seem to recall it was when we had the Deputy Commissioner here the last time, and we were discussing the contract that shall not be named for legal reasons. That one just scraped under. It was £485,000, as I recall from the discussions. Are you having a look at the ones which just scrape under the threshold for greater scrutiny?
I think it's really important that we treat each other with like adults in this situation.
No, absolutely. No. It's a genuine question, because what you could have is something which just scrapes under, and you may have concerns about it.
Yeah,
so it's not trying to catch anybody out.
Yeah. I mean, that's also why the scheme of delegation talks about novel or contentious as well, to give us that wider space. And we have active conversations between the procurement team in MOPAC and the procurement team in the Met to look at things and really have a detailed discussion about what should come forward and what shouldn't, and also making sure that we're tracking savings that are meant to come forward, how they're going, and other considerations.
Okay, and second question, I mean, just following in from that, making sure that we have all the safeguards in place and what have you. It's more about the Met officers themselves and staff. So what steps are being taken to ensure Met officers and staff are trained to use the new technology, both lawfully and effectively?
So that'll depend on a case-by-case basis. So, for example, there is now training for Met officers around how they use something like Copilot, because obviously that is becoming much more. But if you look at something around, for example, how are people going to use, I don't know, if they did procure a new character inquiry service thing, it would be the people in the DBS disclosure that would look at that. If you look at stuff around like public order planning applications, obviously the public order unit, so they would get specific training in those things, because it's not the case that all 32,000 officers are going to be required to use, and the many staff are going to be required to use every piece of software that they procure.
Okay. And just earlier this week, I think it was Derbyshire Police have suspended a serving officer because they used AI to I have to be careful with the use of language here, but they used AI in relation to evidence. Are we satisfied that within the Met that such breaches, again, alleged breaches, have not occurred?
This is something, obviously, as AI becomes more and more used in everyone's day-to-day life, that we're really conscious of. We've asked the Met to come forward with an AI strategy to make sure that both its usage, but also like what safeguards and checks are done in that. We know that in some ways that if you don't set the right boundaries within the technology, AI can hallucinate, and we've seen some awful cases on the back of that too. So we need to make sure that we're obviously encouraging the Met to use technology and get the most positive benefits out of that, but making sure that those safeguards those checks and balances are in place, and we will continue to pursue that, working as well closely with the Deputy Mayor's digital advisor, who's doing a wider piece of work with the Mayor on AI and overall strategy in relation to employment as well.
Okay, excellent. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Before we go to the next question, Deputy Mayor, several times this morning you've mentioned the IAM, which is the Investment Advisory and Monitoring meeting. Now, in a previous committee meeting, we mentioned that the notes of those haven't been published since 2022, and they're still not been published. So you refer to things that we can't go back and look at.
Okay. Yeah, sorry, you're correct, Chair, and I said that I'd endeavour to. I know that obviously sometimes they're limited for commercial reasons, but I'll take that as an action to follow up.
Yeah, I think you said that last time. So if there's a reason you can't, will you let us know? But if you're referring to things that we then can't go back and look at...
I think that action was given to me, so my apologies. I'll make sure that that's rectified. Bad
man, Kenny, bad man. OK, we'll now go over to Assembly Member Best for the next question. Thank you.
Thank you. Can you, Deputy Mayor, could you let us know your assessment of the Met cyber security resilience and how often you receive updates on the risks?
Yes, we work closely with our wider resilience board of the GLA on this. It's obviously something that we take in great consideration because of the risk of attack, and we do a lot of work to make sure that we are doing the preparatory work in relation to an attack. The Met has actually refreshed its cyber strategy for 25 to 30, which replaces the 2020 strategy. MOPAC provides assurance and oversight through EXCO on that. We also, it's important to mention that the Directorate of Audit, Risk and Assurance is currently taking a audit on cybersecurity on the MPS, so we'll also get assurance through that.
Sorry, I missed it. Who's conducting the audit?
The acronym is DARA, so it might be referred to as that, but it's the Directorate of Audit, Risk and Assurance, which is an internal body.
It's an internal?
Yeah, in MOPAC.
Okay. This year, the GLA Oversight Committee published a report on cyber security. As part of that internal audit, can you make sure that they refer to that report and its recommendations?
I'll speak to the head of DARA about it. Yep.
Okay, thank you. As part of that report, there were several recommendations. I just want to check where the Met are on that, and MOPAC's assurances that this is happening. So in terms of the supply chain, one of the recommendations we made in that report was that the National Cybersecurity Centre's Cyber Essential Plus should be a key requirement of anybody in the supply chain. For the Met, is that something that you're aware is happening?
I don't know about specifics of that, but the last discussion I had with the Met about their supply chains, I know that that is something that they have looked at, particularly in light of a breach that they had, I think, 18 or so months ago, now that they do have strengthened safeguards in that area.
Can MOPAC ensure that it is something that the Met look to enforce?
I'll have a conversation with the Met.
Thank you. Secondly, there's a recommendation there that the approach to monitoring cybersecurity investment and pay is benchmarked alongside other public bodies. Is that something that you can also make sure the Met are doing and present and information they're presenting you with?
So sorry, just in terms of their cybersecurity professionals?
So in terms of what the Met pays into cybersecurity, and in terms of the pay that they're paying those individuals, making sure we're benchmarking that across public institutions to make sure that we are spending an appropriate amount and that we're paying the right salaries to attract the best people.
So I know that the Met does continually look at what it pays people to attract the right talent. I also know that a lot of their work in this space is run by Capgemini out of the security centre up in the operations centre up in Scotland. And that obviously wouldn't be a matter for the Met to look at their paying conditions in that space, but I take the wider point.
So that benchmarking does happen?
The Met always looks to pay competitive salaries.
No, I know that's different. I know that the Met, that benchmarking, does it happen or not?
I'll need to come back to you on that specific.
Okay. Could you come back to me on that specifically? And I think that's something that, given the threat to cybersecurity, it's something that MOPAC should be sure is being funded appropriately.
So we're absolutely aware of this. I think at the moment we certainly know that the threats to the Met, as with all public institutions, are increasing. You see increased frequency of issues in that regard, and yep, absolutely they invest millions into this, so that's fine.
Okay. Another recommendation of that report is that the confidential risk updates that MOPAC receive by 2026 should include specific IT legacy systems and the risk that they have, as well as organisations or third-party organisations with access to Met systems. Could you
and there's also, I would go further than that, there's also the grey, what you might call the grey estate in that, which is where people by them have just set up a local sort of data thing, which isn't actually attached to any of the centres, and all of the risk that sort of brings. Those are certainly the sort of issues. I believe that we're having a look at this at the Joint Audit Committee next month.
When you say people, do you mean staff?
So, yeah, exactly.
Okay. Are you happy, would you agree with that recommendation then, that you should be made aware of all those risks?
I mean, it's...
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Thank you. Most of my next question has been answered, but Deputy Mayor, you said that the cybersecurity strategy 25 to 30 has been written. Where would we find that? Because we couldn't find it.
It's an internal document that the Met have done. I think for obvious reasons, they're not currently minded to publish it.
So they don't. The discussion with the Met about this was they don't want to publish it because they don't want to give anybody who may wish to interfere with them any idea about the specifics of the approach that they're taking. But the strategy is backed up by annual plans, which they then bring forward with actions, which they think, and it's moved away from, I suppose the easiest way to characterise it is it's moved away from. You'll have seen the 2020 to 2025 one, which is online, which essentially tries to put, I suppose, a big fence around everything and stop people accessing or getting into the systems at all. And this is then much more now about how do you accept that there are going to be vulnerabilities and that people will always be able to make a hole in the fence and get into it, and actually bring in extra controls to sort of say, or whether it's multi-factor authentication or whether it's something like red flags where it's like, do you really want to send this email, or moving the protection up front. So say Kenny Bowie works in the Met and all of a sudden you find that my email has started sending out 1,000 emails at once. It's rather than going, oh, that's a bit weird, I should explore that, it's putting the block on stuff immediately so that you can then go back and do it. And actually, you manage the risk straight away, and then you look at whether you can actually release it in that sort of way. So it is a different approach, but for understandable reasons, in my view, the Met doesn't want to sort of make that public so that people are aware of it all.
But it's being looked at and refreshed annually.
So the strategy is a 5-year strategy, but there are annual plans which complement that in order that they're taking the right actions and making the right investments.
Okay, and who oversees that?
Oversees that, so that goes internally within the Met, that goes up to EXCO, and then there will be discussions at what they call risk forum, the Joint Audit Committee, or there will also be discussions with MOPAG.
So MOPAG get involved at the last bit.
So the Deputy Mayor will have discussions if there's any specific risks that we think need to be flagged.
Okay, thank you. Assembly Member Roberts, did you want to come back in on anything as it's your... No, thank you. No? Okay, lovely, thank you. Well, that brings us to the end of this meeting. I would like to thank our guests for attending this morning and for their answers to our questions. Can I ask the committee to note the report and the discussion? Noted. Thank you. Can I ask the committee to note the monthly report from MOPAC? Thank you. And can we also delegate authority to me as chairman in consultation with party group lead members to agree any output arising from the meeting? Agreed. Thank you. Can I ask the committee to note its woke, as if it would be woke. Oh my God. Work programme. God forbid. Can we also delegate authority to me as chairman in consultation with party group lead members to agree any output arising from the rapporteurship on the recruitment and retention of Metropolitan Police officers? Yes, is the answer. Thank you, everyone. The next meeting of the committee is scheduled to take place on the 1st of July 2026 at 10 a.m. in the Chamber, City Hall. I have no urgent business, so that concludes today's meeting.